Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. You may be all prepped out, so you're in luck because we're not going to be talking about prepping. We're going to go back to our usual interests because the world cannot be consumed by coronavirus, and we're going to learn about a new type of blockchain project called Minima. My friend Freya told me all about this, and then I met Hugo a couple days ago. I kind of grilled him a little bit because I was really trying to understand the technology. I know, Josh, you're going to understand the tech part a little bit more, but I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this project. Hugo, thank you so much for joining us. Hugo is the CEO over at Minima, Hugo Feiler. So thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about Minima.
Okay, so Minima is a new base layer blockchain protocol. The whole reason for our existence is to become the most decentralized blockchain protocol in existence. In order to do that, every user needs to be equal on the network. Every participant needs to be equal. We can't have one person or one organization that is in control of the other. And so we're not reliant on miners or block producers or leaders. Everyone is an equal. In order to do that, we are a blockchain protocol based on proof of work, because as far as we're concerned, that is the only truly objective measure of participation in the network rather than proof of stake. And the only device that everybody has that can also do the processing required for proof of work is a mobile phone. So my co-founder Paddy, who is the tech genius in this duo, has been working the last 5 years to basically come up with a blockchain protocol that fit in full on a mobile phone. So that is what we have now, basically.
And that's an app. It's not a hardware implementation, so it's not limited to a single phone. That's what I was kind of surprised by.
Absolutely, yeah. No. So in order to get mass adoption, we need to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to run a full node on their phone. So this is a software download. It's phone agnostic, network agnostic, operating system agnostic. And to sort of jump into a little bit more detail about how that works. So, how do we get it so light and compact so it runs in full on a phone? So instead of competing miners working their factories to secure the chain, we have collaborating users, each doing a little bit of work on their phone that gets added together to create the blocks in the blockchain. And also, we also then go to the fact that, in the past, everyone's felt that the fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum had an entire public ledger that everyone could see every transaction for was a really cool thing. But also it's getting very bloated now, it's in the hundreds of gigabytes in terms of size. And so instead of working like that, we keep the ledger, but everyone keeps their own data. So if you imagine a book of the ledger, and so everyone keeps the spine of the book and then their own page. So they only keep their page and the spine. The spine's very small on their page. So if you want to confirm your transactions and your data, then you basically just go back to your page in the book, and then that's confirmed with everything there, basically. So it means it keeps it much, much leaner and more compact. And then also we don't keep all the data. We just keep the proof that the data existed. I mean, you could keep the data if you wanted to, but you don't have to. And this means that you can run an app for as long as you want, and it will only take as much processing and storage as a regular messaging app.
That sounds fascinating. What's happening? You're storing a bunch of a blockchain, which is the data and the hashes from the last block in a chain, and the proof of work is pulled together by a bunch of phones. So what's to stop just a miner that's running a bunch of GPUs to fake themselves to look like a phone and sort of 51%?
So basically every user is equal. So you won't be able to you won't be able to sort of overtake the chain with one user. Obviously, what we will be doing to begin with is we will be bootstrapping lots of phones to simulate it as well. But our aim, obviously, is the whole point of it is that we need lots of users, and we recognise that. That's our single point that we need to create. We need to create lots of users to do that. So the reason, in order to help that, is we've made it as easy as possible for people to run the nodes, and also our go-to-market strategy is to target the telecoms vertical. So obviously they have lots of users with lots of mobile phones, and they also have big challenges that we can help them with. I guess the critical one, obviously, as a value transaction layer, we can help them with billing systems. I mean, they have, the telecom industry has built up its sort of legacy billing systems over the last 30 years, or pieced together, patched it together, which is okay at the moment. But when you look at the scale of number of devices that are going to need to come onto the in the very near future, the current legacy systems can't cope with that scale up, basically. So when we give them an opportunity to have a system whereby they can actually have a direct transactional link between the network provider and the user, as in whether it's a mobile phone or an IoT device, have a direct transactional link, that is something at almost zero cost, and to them to actually put that infrastructure in place, that is something very exciting for them.
And you guys just did a big test program in the Isle of Man.
That's right. We worked with Manx Telecom, which is a network operator in the UK, and we were able to. We had a Minima blockchain running on a couple of phones, and we also ran it into their back-end system as well. We were able to share data from one phone to the other phone. Share tokens, because we can run tokens on the network, so share tokens from one phone to the other phone to enable network access without touching the billing system of Manx Telecom, basically. So it took out the entire requirement for the billing systems to be there in order to verify the transaction, verify the user, and everything like that.
So does that mean you can be an anonymous purchaser of the telecom services, or is your identity attached to it still, even though it's not going through their traditional billing system?
So it's pseudo-anonymous rather than anonymous, and so it means that you can. So effectively, what the telecoms companies are looking for, obviously, is verification that the data that they are sending is someone is paying for, basically. So if you share a token, which would be a kilobyte of data or something like that, with someone else, that person can then send that token of kilobyte of data back to the network operator and get network access. So the telecoms industry, the telecom provider knows that that token has value and that it can be spent on their network. It doesn't necessarily know exactly who it is.
Is that only valuable to countries? Like, whenever I think of crypto as a use case for sell stuff, I think of Africa. Why did you guys do it in Isle of Man? And is it something that's only available for kind of more developed telecom communities, I guess? I don't know what you would call them, networks?
No, I mean the reason why we did it in the Isle of Man is because we're based in the UK, and so we have good connections with the Isle of Man. And actually, interestingly, the Isle of Man is renowned for being very innovative, and so we've been working with innovative telcos to sort of get our sort of proof of concept correct. I mean, what we're finding is, and we are talking to telcos across the board, both in UK, in Switzerland, in APAC. And also beginning conversations in Africa as well. This is a sort of, this is a base layer protocol that can operate across all sorts of different telcos. And we find that each telco has a different use case, a different requirement for that, basically. So this is something that enables them to have to create cost efficiencies, accuracies, and flexibility in their billing, and whether that is to users in developed or developing countries.
So are you using any sort of proof of stake mechanisms as well, or is it a single proof of work mechanism that you're using for consensus?
So no, the base layer protocol, the base layer consensus mechanism is proof of work, all proof of work. However, we have side chains, and so that would be sort of layer 2 like side chains, as Bitcoin does as well. So we are interoperable with layer 2. So what we were looking to do is all of the native tokens will be run on proof of stake side chains effectively, but they'll always come back to the proof of work main chain for validation, because that gives the sort of resilience that we're looking for.
And in terms of like the standard stuff that comes with tokens is how many are you creating? What's the rate of distribution? What's the distribution in the beginning, and all of these sort of questions, I guess.
So there's a supply of 1 billion. But we can create native tokens from those. So in order to create a token, you need to have a Minima coin, and then you basically color those coins to create the token space. Everything is native within that. So you have 1 billion main coins, but we can also tokenize infinitesimally. So we can create as many tokens as you want on that, but you have to have Minima in order to create those tokens basically. So there's a fixed cap, so we'll make it a store of value within that basically, and obviously there wasn't a mechanism, because we're not mining, because people aren't mining for the coins or for the blocks, the system where we could mine that. So what we have is obviously a pre-mine, but everyone mines their own transactions. And the founding team has less than 9% of the overall supply, if that makes sense.
Okay, and just to go back a bit, I just wanted to touch on what you said before, that you store, every individual telephone only stores I'm guessing the hash of the information of the data of their page within that book, and that is sort of proof of the data that's been used. So it's kind of a mesh network within the phone network, so they have to all look. So I have to, if I want to spend my coins, I have to also, I just need the data on my phone. What if my phone disappears from the network? Is there a backup of that within the chain?
It's the node that you're running. It might be the node running on a mobile phone, or it might be running on a light bulb or a IoT device or anything like that. And it's that more that it can run on that basically. But you're right. So basically, everyone keeps that. So basically, you will need to be connected to the network, and that period will probably get shorter and shorter over time. But it does require you to reconnect to the network in order to validate your data against everyone else's network, basically. Absolutely, yeah. But as I say, I guess 10 years ago that might have seemed impossible, but with everyone being online pretty much all the time, and even in developing countries, smartphone penetration and network access is growing and growing, then in 5 years' time that's going to be sort of no issue at all, basically. So in that respect, that's something that that is something, as you say, that we will need to users will need to reconnect to the network in order to validate their transactions.
And what about if they lose their phone?
So if you lose your phone, all you need is your private key to get back into a node. So the node would then be loaded back onto a new device, because it's not the physical device that you're looking at. You're looking at the private key to the network of nodes, if that makes sense.
But the data that you're storing is part of the bigger chain that everyone needs to validate it against. If that data's gone, there's like a hole in the blockchain, right?
If you lose your phone, you can basically just get you re-download onto a new phone the Minima app, and then your own private key, which would take you to the node. So as everything, if you get the private key to that data, then that becomes your data. So if you steal someone's private key, then you're going to do that. But that's the same with anyone's private key, if that makes sense.
And are you leaving the volatility how it is in standard, Bitcoin standard way, where it's just the free market going nuts on it, or are you incorporating some sort of DeFi mechanism to stabilize the price?
No. The only sort of stabilization we're going to look to create is once we've done a private, we have approximately 20% of the coins allocated currently in terms of seed funding, basically. And we're looking probably to do another round of private funding for another 10%, and then look to do a private sale of about another 20%. And then after that, what we're looking to do is have a very fixed amount supply allocated on a monthly basis, and everyone will know what that is. So effectively, almost creating the same kind of stability that Bitcoin has built in terms of the supply of coins coming into the network, basically. So again, it will be based, as you know, we are going to base it on market forces, because being truly decentralized, we want it to be something that isn't sort of influenced other than market forces.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of market forces, and I think eventually projects like yourselves will equal out if it becomes big enough and stuff.
Exactly,
but it takes a long time. And you're is the project regulated through, like you said, it was an ICO sort of mechanism with pre-sales and stuff. You might change the name because whatever, but at the end of the day, it's the same mechanism as that, right?
Yeah. At the moment, the regulatory framework that we're working under at the moment. So we're working with SAFT agreements, but we have a legal opinion in the UK from the FCA that we are a utility token. But again, the landscape is moving so fast and so dramatically in different directions. We're sort of navigating our way through that.
That's crazy.
But I guess from our perspective, a good perspective, because we are by absolute nature of our makeup and our vision decentralized, and that is what we are working towards. That puts us in a good place in terms of sort of the decentralization guardrails, as it were. And
it's free and open source, right?
Yeah, so it's already open source and very open source, and absolutely. So what our plan is at some point, once we get to mainnet, is then put the open source protocol into something like the Apache Foundation, because again, in order to get scale and decentralization, it has to be open source.
Yeah.
Great. So what happens now when so you did this test? In Isle of Man, what are the next steps for the project?
So, we are building out now our next with hopefully within Isle of Man, actually sort of to take the pilot stage. So originally the proof of concept was very much specific to Manx Telecom. What we're now looking to do is go one step lower in the tech stack, and then take it to something that can actually be sort of universally taken to other telcos. We're obviously working up. We're in fund. We're capital raising at the moment. I suppose most startups are generally, and we're basically engage further with other telcos and also our verticals. We're talking to ticketing is one that's quite interesting. And also voting mechanisms as well, because obviously if you have something that's in everyone's hands, like a mobile phone, and you put a blockchain on that, then that's very interesting. It's interesting. HTC launched a new phone, their new Exodus 1, which is about mining Monero. And actually interesting, they talked about the fact that it's you're not really going to make enough money. It takes 500 years to make enough money mining Monero to pay for the phone itself. But what they're more interested in is the distribution of hashes, basically. So effectively, the more distributed you are. And so actually, I think what's interesting for us is, that's almost retrofitting distribution. What we're actually doing from the core is creating a distributed network from the beginning. You often think that, has actually had mobile phones when she created Bitcoin, then he probably would have used mobile phones to do the processing. That can't, you can't go back to that now with the mining incentives that are created. So what we're doing now, we have mobile phones doing the processing in a way that is completely distributed.
I'm still skeptical that someone can't spoof looking like a mobile phone and have a shed load of power. That's the only criticism.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, so that's why we are going to the telcos first, because any one of those telcos that we're using, that we're working with, they have, we're looking at millions of users in this instance, and a million nodes running on the network. You'd need to be running a million nodes to, you'd need to be running 500,000 nodes in order to try and spoof the network, basically. And also it's proof of work as well. And I mean, that's important for us as well. You'd have to continue to do that. You'd see it coming and you'd work it through. So we are going through that bootstrapping period. So you're absolutely right, Josh, that, that is that point. Once we get to critical mass, then you have the most resilient possible network, because it's completely distributed. It doesn't have centralized miners. It doesn't have 21 block producers trying to decide what to do between each other and all that kind of stuff. Basically, it literally is every user trying to do that. That makes sense.
Oh, good luck, man.
Yeah, rock and roll. I like this project. Keep us posted. And thanks so much for coming on the Tatiana Show. Before we let you go, though, where can people find out more? If you could just give us the links to the site.
So I mean, the website is www.minima.global, and on Twitter we are Twitter_global, and on Telegram again probably Twitter Minima_global as well, basically. So yeah, please check us out and follow us, we're on an exciting journey, and we're very excited to be sharing with you guys.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Take care. Bye. Stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com.
Josh is taking care of things over at Voltoro, but I'm hanging out with Steve Beauregard of GoCoin. What's going on, Steve? How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Tatiana?
I'm loving your view. We've recently added a little bit of video to the Tatiana Show, and I'm digging the scene where you are. I know that house. That Malibu view is unreal.
Yeah, it's been great. But we're holed up here with 8 kids, my wife and I, and so all college or late high school years. And so it's kind of like we should be shooting a reality show here right now. It's pretty funny to watch how everyone interacts and what they do with their days.
Well, there's definitely worse places to be quarantined. How have you been holding up? What's it like out in California? Tell me.
It's actually not bad. I mean, I think a lot of, sort of the early steps that the governor took here really helped. And so I think that we're probably not going to see it as badly as New York has been hit. And so I think that it's been good, but I'm really ready for this to be over. I'm ready to get back to going to restaurants, going to sporting events, and all that kind of stuff.
Do you think that that's going to happen? I mean, when do you think this is going to be over, and how soon until we're allowed to do a lot of the things that we enjoy doing?
Yeah, I think by early May or mid-May or so, I think we're going to start seeing some easing where the lowest risk people, or the people that have already been infected and recovered, start to reemerge and start to do things. The high-risk folks, unfortunately, I have an 84-year-old mother, and I think she's actually 85 now as of New Year's. But those types of people are going to have to be, still in safe places and away until there's some sort of a herd immunity, unfortunately.
Where have you been getting your news around COVID? Because I feel like there's a lot of really differing stories. I mean, there's proven issues with the way that they've been doing the accounting for the bodies and for the sick and for the testing. So where are you getting your information from, and how much of it are you consuming?
Yeah, so I'm consuming a ton. We really started looking at it in late January because my wife and I had a trip to Thailand planned the first week of March. And we were supposed to go to China originally, and obviously that was canceled. Then changed it to Japan. She ended up staying home so that we could take our high school age kid on a college tour, which of course was canceled. And I ended up going with our mutual friend Tiffany, and but my wife and Diana, our other mutual friend, decided to not go on the trip and mostly to stay back and take care of the kids. But as it turned out, I think that Japan at the time was a super safe place. Thailand certainly was, but now those places have definitely spiked up. So I've been watching this very closely since January, mostly getting from the Johns Hopkins site in terms of statistics. You really have to interpolate that data though, because it's there's a lot more infection cases than anyone thinks. I at some point was of the theory that a lot more people were infected than we thought, but I'm starting to think that's probably not the case, just because we isolated quite early, as early as March here in California and other places even earlier than that.
Well, so what do you think? You mentioned Johns Hopkins. I've had a few different alternative people call into question Johns Hopkins, and there's a few things around, of course, the Gates Foundation, and then there was this Event 201, and so it seems a little bit suspicious. Do you feel confident in Johns Hopkins as a source, being that there are some incentives along those friendship lines that would lead to, let's say, mass vaccinations? There's maybe some perverse incentives going on, or do you feel like that's still a very good source? Have you looked into any of that information?
Yeah, I think the numbers are off. I mean, we all know China's not giving accurate numbers. Russia and India certainly aren't giving anything close to accurate, if they're reporting at all. And I think the only numbers you can really count on is the deaths, of course. I think those numbers are pretty good, not necessarily from China, but from at least from the Western countries, the U.S., and I think the European countries are honestly reporting those numbers. But in some cases, I think there's an article came out today, I think in the New York Times, that New York is now going to count 4,000 some cases as COVID cases, even though they aren't even confirmed as the cause of death. And so I'm wondering maybe there's some federal incentives to have those numbers be a little bit elevated. And so, yeah, I do sort of wonder about some of the sources and how accurate those numbers are, and what incentives might have them skew the numbers.
Yeah, I've definitely heard some concerns about different states fluffing the numbers because then they're likely to get more aid. And it's kind of a strange incentive, because you should want as much aid as you can possibly get for your constituents if you are in that role. So it's definitely a lot of ethical questions are coming into mind. What do you think of this lockdown, though? I mean, how long do you think that this is going to go from an economical perspective? I mean, I don't think that it can go that much longer. We've never seen anything like this. I would say that I think that it's out of proportion. I certainly don't think it's necessary to do all of this. And, with all of the different statistics around what happens with unemployment, what happens around money stresses, you have to wonder, people are going to kill their wives, their wives are going to kill their husbands, equal opportunity. There could be a lot of divorces, there could be a lot of domestic violence, alcoholism, suicide. How do we balance that?
Yeah. And it's really sad. There's been a number of suicides that have touched my life. One being just yesterday. Well, I don't know that it was a suicide, but I'm sort of assuming based on the circumstances that it may have been. But another one of Lee's close friends from high school, jumped off a bridge in front of a train a couple weeks ago, and it's just a terrible situation where I think people really do get to the point they're just feeling desperate, and this other people that maybe were already struggling with anxiety or depression, and maybe this just pushes them over the edge. So I think it's time to start getting at least some solid strategies about how we get back to life and start to produce again. and come out of this. But I think that the numbers are way below what we thought they would be in terms of overwhelming hospitals in the medical system. My brother, for example, is a retired anesthesiologist in Maryland, and he's on like 2 or 3 volunteer lists to provide his services to intubate patients. And, he's very experienced and very capable, and he hasn't been called up. And he's kind of like, I feel like, there's all of this panic around me, but, here I am, a trained medical professional, and nobody's calling in for my services.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's been going on in a lot of places. I've heard from some nurse friends that a lot of nursing staff has been laid off because nobody's coming into the hospital. The people that are going to get their regular, heart surgery or face surgery, whatever weird thing that they're getting, they're not even coming in because they're afraid of coronavirus.
I think there's been basically, they said no elective surgeries. That's been sort of a widespread thing. So what my brother said is all the anesthesiologists that would be doing those elective surgery cases, whether it's a knee or hip replacement or whatever the case might be, they're sitting idle. So there's plenty of qualified non-retired anesthesiologists to go around right now because they're not working on anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wonder how this is going to affect the job market. Obviously, we've seen that graph that shows all the different, years of people applying for unemployment, and then the most recent jump has been unprecedented.
You know what I think is really super interesting? The people that have had the virus and recovered are going to be super valuable. Like, think about somebody who works maybe at a crappy little restaurant down in LA who has recovered from this. They can go to the top restaurants and say, "Hey, I've already been infected. I'd like to apply for your job to be a waiter here. Sure, I might not have the training, but you can train me, and I'm low risk." So of course they're going to scoop those jobs up.
But have they even established that is what's going to happen? I mean, from what I understand, people don't even know if you've had it once, if you actually will be less likely to get it in the future. I know that that's generally how it works with certain things, but that doesn't seem to be confirmed with this unless maybe you have different info.
Yeah, I think that I've looked at this pretty extensively, and I think there's more than one strand of the virus. I think it's 2 or possibly even 3 at this point. But I think that once you beat one of the strands, then they sort of feel like, you've beat it already. So the other strands aren't going to be terribly worse, the way they impact you. So if you had a mild case, maybe a fever or whatever, if you've built up some antibody to it, now your body is sort of trained, like a trained ninja that knows how to go in and kill that virus. So I think the thinking is, even if you get another strand, that it won't be as severe.
Right. Well, that's one way of looking at it, and I would hope that it would be that way. But then it says, all these different things where once you've had it, you could still be infecting people. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned about all this social distancing. I think people are being extremely paranoid to the point where, I'm sorry, but if you're going outside for a walk and you don't have a neighbor within 50 feet of you, I don't think that you need a mask. And
no, I agree.
And it's kind of turning everybody into these, I don't know, like the people who turn in on their neighbors, there's people getting arrested, there's people paying huge fines.
Yeah.
And that it's insanity. So I just don't know how much of this we're going to put up with. What do you think of the climate around Trump? I know that sometimes you seem to like Trump, to the great dismay of your Facebook friends. They don't like that. I think it's hilarious because I'm not on Team Trump by any means, but I think that he's okay right. Sometimes I think he does a good job.
I'm constantly
what's your
entertained.
take?
I'm entertained by Trump. And I'm not a big fan of him personally. And sure, he says a lot of crazy, stupid things. Ironically, some of the crazy, stupid things he said have turned out to be true. A lot of them actually have. But at the same time, he can't help himself. He talks in hyperbole all the time. And I think a lot of people will stick with what he said and take those little things like it's a hoax. This is the Democrats' new hoax, the coronavirus. And, at the time he said that, it wasn't, unlike he hadn't been through 3 hoaxes just before then, and they all turned out to be. So he's batting 3 out of 4 on hoaxes. But I think that a lot of people just love to hate him, and they just can't wait to hang on the next stupid thing he says. And they're just going to, take the worst case of that or what CNN tells you that he said, and that's now their new talking point. But I think in this upcoming election, there's really no contest. I can't see, especially during a crisis time like this, putting a new person in place.
Well, he seems to be getting a lot of public approval, despite the fact that some people don't like him. But I've never seen such a concentrated effort to destroy a president. Now, maybe I was too young during the Bush era in terms of Junior Bush. And so I definitely didn't like him, and the media shredded him. But what's gone on with Trump is to me unprecedented. And it makes me wonder, and I'm always wondering, is he a good guy? And he really is on team good? Is he sort of a plant? There's something that really tickles my conspiracy funny bone about all of this. Because you look at during the impeachment, there was so much quantitative easing going on already. Right. It seems like a very, very convenient way to break the economy, transfer an enormous amount of wealth to the government, to this corporate class. And, then they've all of a sudden they have this global ID system. And, if you don't get your vaccine proof, well, then you're a bad person. It's not that we want to look in your underwear drawer constantly. The regular questions that you would have around privacy are completely suspended because we have, coronavirus.
We lost a lot of civil liberties after 9/11. The Patriot Act is encroached on so many parts of our lives, and that led to all sorts of invasions of privacy and the kind of surveillance that we've seen. Surveillance state. Now you're going to have tracking of your movements, and it's all going to be precedented on the fact that we need to know what you've been exposed to, what you haven't been exposed to. And so that's sort of my concern at this point, is how the government takes it on. And believe me, in the early days of this, I saw the need for a tracking app right away. Like, I'd go to one of the local stores to pick up some things, and I was thinking, I want to know if anybody else has been in this store who ends up being positive for the coronavirus in the next 4 or 5 days, because that would be good information to have. But obviously there's lots of people working on that app now, and I think Google's I've heard is working on such a thing. But that's going to end up being a huge encroachment on our privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that Google, who scrubs the internet of anything that ever criticizes her Lordness, her evil priestesshood, Hillary Clinton. I mean, come on, these guys shouldn't be in charge of that. Right. What do you think of Trump playing around with defunding the World Health Organization? I've read some things about the head of the organization, the guy from Ethiopia. He has some bad reviews. He was, curiously qualified for that position, to put it nicely. There's some concerns around China. What do you think? Should we be defunding the WHO? What would be the potential benefit and detriment from something like that? Yeah,
I think the WHO really blew this in a big way. If you look back at some of their public tweets about no human-to-human transmission, they were flat wrong on that. There's lots of cases. And I think that they really didn't get out ahead of this as fast. Even when Trump, basically shut down the travel to China, they were very critical of that, and they had that wrong too. Obviously, Europe kept China open, and they got hit hard. Italy got just crushed by the virus, and so I think that is defunding the right answer? I don't know, but definitely they need to be taken to the woodshed. And however that looks, but I'd like to see some open source kind of solutions around those types of organizations, as opposed to these big bureaucracies. But something where people can contribute to it, and other experts are giving their input.
Right. Well, something that I looked into, some people have some question marks around Bill Gates. I think that there are some questions. For example, why was he on the plane with Epstein after he had already gone to jail for his original crimes that he didn't really get punished for? And I recently posted something about it. It was really quite popular. But one of the questions was around his foundation, or the project that he's working on through Microsoft and the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, ID 2020. And so they're basically working on a project to create identification for everybody. So this way, you get your papers and you're allowed to function. And it was interesting because not only were they working with these large organizations, but they had also put in a blockchain element, bringing in Blythe Masters. and
Right.
I guess they're doing some stuff with Hyperledger as well. So I don't know. I'm not really too keen on having these guys in charge of this. I think that there's some questionable stuff. I mean, do you have any concerns around these
Yeah,
larger
there's always
organizations?
there's always concerns, and I think a lot of people that how do I want to put it? There's a sentiment among certain people who uh, feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. Why should I be scared? I'm going to just give all my information. And I've heard that kind of sentiment quite often. Meanwhile, there's people who do things that are completely legal that they might just want to keep private, and they're not doing anything wrong, but they want privacy in what they do because they're going to be judged by any certain people, or maybe somebody's not going to do business with them because they buy a certain product, or they do make certain lifestyle choices. It could be as simple as marijuana. It's perfectly legal here in California, but you go to other parts of the world. And so, legality is also a matter of the jurisdiction in which you're living. So from that standpoint, you want privacy in your transactions. And that's, a lot of what Bitcoin, near and dear to our hearts, has been around or been about. But, as you come to really realize it's not as private as you really might think. Once, any authority really wants to get to the bottom of it, they pretty much can at this point.
You've been in the crypto space for a really, really long time. What has really surprised you about the evolution?
2012 is when I got in. 2013 is when I helped launch GoCoin. But I think some of the surprises are the use in transactions I thought would be greater. That was one of our early ideas with GoCoin. BitPay had started a little bit earlier, but they were really tied to Bitcoin in the early days. We really saw the use of the altcoins as the way that it would scale, that you would start to get other coins, like Litecoin is a better transactional currency than Bitcoin, still is today, just because it's a faster block times. So you can confirm things faster. And so we really saw that, when we designed our systems early on so that they could take altcoins, and that turned out to be a good competitive advantage for us. But I think I'm surprised by how fast the number of coins grew. And if you look back at 2017, the big sort of Cambrian explosion, if you will, of the altcoins. And sure, it was a little bit out of control, and the U.S. government certainly poured some cold water on it and slowed things down. But I'd say that surprised me, that it sort of went so fast and furious, and maybe just a little bit too fast. And then I'd say today it seems like we're sort of in a little bit of a lull. It's sort of like we're in shock after the cold water was poured on in 2017, and the companies are still sort of coming out of that. And the regulators are still coming to terms with what it is and what it isn't. So I'd like to see some more light touch from the government has been good, but then at the same time, I think they need to get rid of some of the things that are inconsistent. And by that I mean, like, for example, the taxation on small transactions. Anything that's under $600, I think, really should be treated as a foreign currency versus a transaction where you pay capital gains on it.
Yeah, it's definitely very preclusive for businesses to adopt Bitcoin, especially if you're a small business. What have you guys seen in terms of that evolution? And do you think that now, with the whole post-corona world, there's going to be a greater demand for GoCoin?
I think so. Shockingly, our transaction volume's only down about 13% from last quarter. And that's mostly in March. March was really pretty catastrophic across the board. We have a lot of travel companies like Cheap Air and Destinia, which that work with us, and their transactions just went to almost zero, as you can imagine. But some of the other sites that we have are doing well. Some in the gaming space, and some in the virtual goods and so forth. They've done quite well, because I think people are home, and what are you gonna do? Play games and those sort of things. So I think overall, coming out of this, all of the quantitative easing that we've seen really just makes crypto more valuable. It's something that it's not subject to being diluted in value. And so I think that once all of this flood of money starts coming in, that's when you're going to start to see the price go up, number one, and I think the usage as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was expecting, I don't know, Bitcoin to do better after this big shakeup, but we'll see how it ends up going, right? Because it really kind of took a dive, but then it was holding at 6,700 for a long time, and that's kind of where it's been hanging out with a couple jumps and stuff. But I mean, wouldn't the idea be, okay, financial collapse imminent, go to the moon?
Where's the safe harbor?
So what's going on with that? I mean, why do you think that we're not seeing a bigger jump, or do you think that people are sort of still in shock?
I think that there's some panic selling around needing cash. And that's one thing, is the crypto folks need cash still. And when you start seeing the selling, at some point people just go, hey, I don't really care. I just see the trend. The trend is down. I better get myself into some cash right now. So I think we had some big, whale size sales that happened. And then, I think the same thing will happen in the other direction, where at some point somebody's going to realize that it's undervalued and start to buy in heavily again.
Okay, so let's say somebody has some cash at home, right? I started to think about this. I mean, how soon do you think that person who maybe saved some money and has it in USD is going to start seeing some devaluation of that money? I mean, how soon do people, is it like hot potato? Or do you think that the US dollar is going to be around for a while longer? I mean, how's this going to pan out?
Yeah, the US dollar is going to be around for quite some time still. That's not.
You don't think we're going to see hyperinflation? I think that's what they said about the money in Germany. They're like, oh, it's going to be fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll see some inflation. There's no doubt about that. But I think that just asking about the US dollar in general, so you might see some inflation. But at the same time, it's not going anywhere. It's not like we're not going to have the US dollar, and it's still going to be the reserve world currency because we have a military that secures that.
Yeah, I think that the military securing it is a legit point. But, I mean, they're really printing a lot of money. It's got to come down at some point. Or is this going to just prove us all wrong? All the Austrians in the room are just going to be like, what happened? Can you just, it was Keynes right all along?
Right.
Like, can you just keep going? I saw the national debt go from 23 trillion to 24 trillion. I was like, why don't you just add some more? No big deal. It's cool.
Now we've done it.
And so, people are getting their little tiny checks from the government, but then they're giving away all these goodies to all these different businesses that frankly should have been prepared for something like this. Just like the little guy is going to get a lesson in having to have a savings account. A lot of us could probably be using one of those, but the businesses, I mean, there's actually like no incentive to run your business in a responsible way, because then you won't get any benefits and you're going to be stuck paying for the jerks anyway. So I don't know.
And I know that I mean, this is a weird time for everything from landlords to, one of the things that came out of this is I've got a buddy who, one of the named partners on a downtown LA law firm. He's got, 700 attorneys. But he said, it's really amazing to me to watch how smoothly this has gone for us. And I'm sort of rethinking the fact that we have, 4 stories of downtown LA office space, and thinking maybe we don't need 4 stories anymore. Maybe we only need 1 story. And that's sort of a really interesting shift. So I think a lot of commercial real estate is going to take a big hit on this. Our kids are all, doing their schoolwork from here. It's a little tough on the internet because of where we live. But, 8 students here doing college courses and 2 doing high school courses, and they're getting by just fine. And it's, they're still doing the work, and it's just kind of amazing to watch how easily people have adapted in many ways.
Well, I've been seeing some articles about college students suing their universities because they're not actually getting the college experience. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Just the need for college in the first place. I mean, I'm not such a big fan.
Yeah.
I think.
Hey, people that went to trade school are all working right now.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of lousy because people give a kind of a negative snobby connotation to people that don't go to college, and it's really. I would say that maybe I had even fallen into that a little bit, but It's ridiculous. All those people are making the world go around. They're a lot more useful than some of these other pencil pushers. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road in the world, right? And
right.
But I don't know, like, what do you think is the emotional vibe around LA? Are you guys not really interacting? Are people very afraid that you've been kind of talking to?
You know, it's a mixed bag. It really depends on what kind of business you're in. I've got a friend who does like credit repair, and he's as busy as he can be right now. And he kept his staff sort of working from the office for a while. I think they're now working from home, but their business is kind of still booming. I've got other friends in the restaurant business, and they're just getting killed right now. One of the good things that LA has done is they're allowing restaurants to sell alcohol and have it delivered, and that's not something they've had before. So, you know, he's got wine specials going on, and you know, so he's trying to sell wine with every one of his orders because that really helps their numbers. But he's like, you know, it's nothing like having the whole restaurant open.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll find out how much longer this is going to go on. Do you think that there's going to be a big problem with China going forward? Because Trump seems pretty angry. There seems to be
and he
somewhat...
should be. I think the world should be angry.
Right.
Not just Trump. The whole world should be angry at China right now for not giving us the information much sooner that this was coming. They knew this back in probably December, how bad things were getting and spreading over there. So, you know, you can't tell me for a second that their numbers are 80,000. Not a chance.
Do you think that was on purpose? I mean, do you give any credence to the idea that this was a very convenient way to crash the world economy and then allow China to kind of flourish? I mean, their economy has not taken nearly as big a hit. Their stock market anyway seems to be good, which isn't always the same indication, but
yeah. Well, I've heard a couple of different theories that make sense. I don't think that the release of this was necessarily intentional, but I'm kind of buying into this.
Do you think it's man-made?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think this was man-made, and I think that one of the theories that makes sense is somebody at that lab in Wuhan, the viral lab in Wuhan, just sold one of the animals to that market. And it was a tested animal, and they just, hey, you know, it's probably be fine. I'm just going to sell this animal to the market, and I can make a couple bucks. And it's probably a low-level employee, and then boom, it went out. And I think they just really wanted to cover that up. And,
can you get a disease from eating an animal, though? Like, when has that ever happened? Does that normally happen?
If it's infected with something like this, yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
I never heard of getting a disease from an animal. I mean, yeah, I guess you get catch scratch fever, right?
Yeah. So, but if you're taking that, you know, you have an infected animal and you bring it home and it's raw still, and then you're cooking it, even though you cooked it, you still have, you know, that. And then once you start, you know, passing it to the next person, then you go into each person is going to infect 3 more people, and then 3 more off of there, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I guess my question was if they're boiling the bat in the soup. But yeah, you're right. During the time that they take it home, if it's got gross diseases on it, it's spreading in the air, not just when you digest it. Because if it's boiled, I mean, I don't know how they serve bat soup. I haven't had it recently. It's been a while. Got to put that on my quarantine meals.
Right.
So
anyway, I mean, that's likely was something like that, how it was released. There's interesting timing around the Harvard professor who was arrested. There's, you know, sort of a lot of timing around the trade deal with the U.S. and you know, China probably not wanting all of this bad publicity when they finally got the economy going, the trade deals, you know, starting, there's, you know, reopening everything, the economy's coming back, and they don't want to hurt that. And so I think they tried to keep this quiet and hope they could come up with some ways to suppress it or crush it there. And it went out to the world, and of course it did. And now I think China needs to pay. They owe reparations in my mind.
Right. Well, I don't really see that happening anytime soon. You know, it was also very convenient for all the protests around the world. All those people who were just protesting for, you know, what were they protesting for a year in France? I mean, they were going bananas over there, which I know that they like their protests. It's strange to see all of those protests neutralized so effectively due to a disease that in essence is not really killing many people. There's lower amounts of, for example, pneumonia diagnosis. Maybe some of those people are getting, you know what I'm saying? Like those are very similar symptoms. So I don't know. Something smells to me about this. I don't know what smells, but something is stinky. Where do you think that people?
Probably one of those we can't handle the truth moments, right?
It might be. You know, when David Icke starts sounding like the sanest guy in the room, things have really gone topsy-turvy. And incidentally, I got to tell you, David Icke's, I know that David Icke is like the lizard person, but I've been talking about him lately because his stuff lately is really fire. And aside from some of his reasoning, which, you know, take it or leave it, what he talks about is, you know, that mental prison that we're all in because of fear. And I think that this is a really profound moment where perhaps we could go full on 1984 Brave New World horror cocktail, or maybe there could be a little bit of an elevation, maybe some kind of an age of Aquarius like we've been promised. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Where do you think people should park their money, though? I mean, in financial advice, but it's such a strange time, right? So if you're a regular person, you know, all of a sudden you have to become a genius at investing, which can be challenging. I mean, what do you think that the average Joe should do right now if they're concerned about hyperinflation, for example?
I still like the diversity method. You know, I personally keep some in real estate. I keep some in Bitcoin and a lot in mutual funds. Mutual funds have really, you know, over the historic periods have done, you know, fantastically well, consistent. And so diversity is really the answer in my mind. So a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe gold too. You know, gold has probably been the best performer through this whole period. And, you know, usually in crisis times, gold does well. I'm actually a little disappointed in how Bitcoin did through this. So
it could be worse, but I'm with you. I want to, you know, we'll see what happens. Do you think the halving is going to have an effect?
Strangely, you know, if you look at the last two that we've been around for, or at least where I was paying attention, it always got priced in really early. So, you know, what is it, coming up on about, a month and a half away or a month away? And really haven't seen any price action based on the halving. But, you know, in the previous ones, it sort of was priced in way, you know, 16 months ahead of time was when it really popped up 4 years ago. And then by the time the event actually happened, it was sort of like, you know, it's coming, buy the rumor, sell the news. And so I don't think it's going to have much of an impact other than, you know, it's going to be a bunch of miners that, you know, financially can't mine anymore.
Do you anticipate any kind of special evolutions along the crypto space? You know, what do you think is kind of coming down the pike? Where do you think the next big excitement is going to be?
You know, I think I saw Abra is going to change over to a custodial wallet. I've said for years I think a custodial wallet's a great idea. In fact, at GoCoin we've talked numerous times about doing that, and we just needed to find the right jurisdiction where we would launch that. And we've now recently organized in Luxembourg. And so one of the things that we're looking at is e-money licenses over there and possibly doing a custodial wallet. But I think that's going to be an area that gets really super interesting because it takes away that problem of, you know, you're responsible for your own key, which is we, the early people in Bitcoin, love. But I tell you what, it's a pain in the ass to manage your own wallet. And, you know, especially across multiple coins. And did this coin do this? And this coin split off and forked and did this other thing. And staying on top of that stuff is just impossible. So I think a custodial wallet that's going to manage those components for you and track your transactions. I really like the work that Paul Pui has done with the Edge wallet. He's got a lot of really interesting features, but he's still a non-custodial wallet. But he's got a lot of cool features that track the usage and the counting and some of those things. But I think the wallet tech has got a very bright future.
Yeah. Do you think that we're going to see more mass adoption? I mean, what's going to be that tipping point? I was thinking that, you know, with all this stuff going on, there should be a lot of people kind of interested, but maybe there's not enough marketing around Bitcoin itself that would warrant that. You know, I mean, you had all these protesters, they could have used some Bitcoin. All these people who have their, yeah, why do you think that is? How are we going to move past that stage? Is it just a matter of time and sludging through?
I think it's going to be something that's going to be revolutionary in the wallet tech space is really what I believe is going to be the game changer. Something that's difficult to do today that suddenly becomes super easy. Like Venmo has been a great solution for just sending a couple bucks here and there where, you used to be like, hey, you owe me this much money and, you have to get cash and next time you see them, you're going to hand it over. And now, the kids are just, hey, just Venmo me, boom, boom. It just moves out of their bank account. It's super, super convenient and easy. So it's got to be something that blindly, stupidly easy.
Do you think that Trump is a friend of Bitcoin?
He hasn't seemed to be adversarial. Is he a friend? I think he's all about the U.S. dollar. So, to the extent that it doesn't hurt the U.S. dollar, I think he's in. But the second anything smells like it's going to, have any impact negatively on the U.S. dollar, he's going to be out. That's my sense of it.
Really? Okay. So do you think that a Fed coin is inevitable?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you thinking on the timeline for that one? I'm surprised they didn't put it in right now because everybody wanted their goodies, right?
Yeah.
What better way? It would have been a little fast.
Yeah, but I think it's also tied to identity and the real ID stuff, and there's just a lot of little pieces at play. It's hard to do. It's not going to be a simple solution, and I think when they do it, it's going to be very slow and rolled out through the banks, and I think it's just going to take time. It's probably just more time than we think. But once it happens, I think it's just going to be nobody will even know the difference that they're doing anything different than moving money through Venmo.
Has Corona influenced the way that you're thinking about the growth for GoCoin? I mean, have you guys had to kind of adjust your plans a little bit, one way or the other?
I would say not tragically. Like we had some talks about, hey, is this a time to retrench and maybe launch a different business? We do have a little bit of the luxury of some surplus that we have from a couple of really good years, and we don't see merchant transactions growing astronomically. They are very, very slow growth, and so the company I always describe more as a Clydesdale than a unicorn. But we've been talking about what other things we could do, and I don't think we're any closer because of coronavirus, to answer the question.
How do the sin businesses break out of the problems that they have? Bitcoin was supposed to help with a lot of these businesses, the adult entertainment industry, the cannabis industry, all these things that are naughty. And yet that has ended up being difficult from other regulatory parts of the transaction. What's going to happen with that? How long can this go on for? Have you seen a significant understanding on the government side that this is just, it's pretty fascistic?
Yeah, it's all comes down to banking. I mean, the reason that the sin businesses haven't done well in crypto is because banking's difficult. GoCoin had a large number of adult clients in the early days, and now we're down to a very, very small select few, and it's just like the most reputable ones, and it's because it's hard to pay them. Banks, the intersection of crypto and adult, banks don't like. Cannabis is like the third rail of the subway. They won't touch that with crypto. So it really comes down to banking. And once we start getting some banks that will handle crypto and those areas, I think they'll do super, super well. But it's going to take a really, really strong compliance program for that because they'll be under a lot of scrutiny.
What do you think will happen with these elections? I'm guessing that you think Trump is going to crush whoever. I'm pretty much on that tip. What do you think the result is going to be?
No, I think it's probably the largest landslide since Reagan is what we're probably going to see.
Wow.
That is barring somebody else come in to the fight like Gavin Newsom or Cuomo or somebody that can, quote, save the party. I think that the widespread belief is that Joe Biden is losing it, and sadly, because dementia is terrible for anybody. And but just based on the things that he says and the number of times that he just sounds like he's off his rocker, just is alarming. But then he turns around and he sounds completely normal and smart. He's always been a smart man, but sadly, I think that everyone, reality or perception's reality, and the perception is he's losing it. That's a widespread, and he's not going to be able to overcome that.
I'm surprised that you mentioned Gavin Newsom at all, because from everybody that I know that is remotely, like politically woke, I guess, they hate him. He's horrible. He's done terrible things in California.
I despise almost everything he's done. He's handled this pandemic well, which is the only reason I bring his name up, is because he's gotten really good press for how well he's handled the pandemic in California. And we don't see the kind of numbers here as we do in New York. That partially could be weather related and the fact that we're more spread out. But he did lock things down very early. He's been very aggressive about it. He's done a good job getting the resources to California. So, people's memories are this short. If you've done something good recently and, you're the only alternative, people pay attention to that. But no, I'm not a Gavin Newsom fan by any stretch of the imagination. Quite the contrary.
Yeah, he's pretty horrible. I've also been hearing about AB 5 quite a bit, which was causing a lot of shakeups out in California, which was the anti-freelancers law. So they basically made it so all the freelancers got fired. So now you've got the state shut down plus this anti-freelancer law. Why aren't there people rioting in the streets? And would you say, because, people can't eat. They weren't able to eat. Think about all those people that were already suffering for 3 months thinking, oh, crap, what am I going to do now? And then they get that lockdown. I can't even imagine what that's like for them. Why aren't people flipping out?
So mostly what those freelancers have done is they've gone and organized themselves as a company, as an LLC, and then they circumvent those rules. And so that's another $800 to the state of California for each one of those people too. So that's the annual fee for running an LLC. So it's just
that's the annual fee for running an LLC is $800 a month? A year?
That's right. Franchise Tax Board collects $800 every year.
Wow. That's gutsy.
Welcome to California.
I would like to visit California, but it keeps getting worse. All the poop in the streets. The issue is also that when the Californians leave and they go to another nice, respectable state like Texas, they're bringing a lot of that politics with them. And I hate to be that person that makes fun of the left, but they've gone completely off the rails. And it's very, very damaging to the economy. California's economy is huge, and yet there's a lot of kind of gaps and problems happening because of all the things you guys are spending money on.
Yeah.
How do you survive without strangling all of your neighbors?
Stupid bullet trains between LA and San Francisco that nobody wants.
Right.
It's now stopping in Merced, which is like a cow town, and goes to Bakersfield, another cow town. So we got a bullet train they're now working on for billions and billions of dollars. They're already over budget, and they keep taxing us to pay for a bullet train that no one wants to ride. It's just insanity.
Right, but why doesn't anybody figure it out? People can't all be stupid, right? Is it just because I think of California as the brainwashed capital of the world, right? You've got Hollywood, you've got that influence. They're all into, Californians have their own breed. But after a while, anybody sane would think that some of these policies are going a little bit overboard. Have you seen a shakeup among friends there? Or people kind of waking up, especially now that there's this huge government crackdown on people leaving the house, even more so?
Have you seen the weather?
The weather does add a lot. I will agree.
And that's what people say. It's like, why do you put up with this? Like, have you seen the weather? It's just the best weather in the world. I've traveled everywhere, and I can't say enough good things about what the climate is like here. I just absolutely love it. But the political climate is oppressive. It's not good for business. It's unbelievable some of the stuff that the politicians get away with. But people keep voting Democrat in the state, and that's just the way it is.
Right. Well, maybe one day we won't have to be worrying that much about voting. We can rule ourselves. That would be nice. That's my hope.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, well, we've got a little bit of evolution to do worldwide before we're totally ready for that one. But I don't know, considering the way that things are getting run, it's an interesting time because I don't know. people might be getting red pilled at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some people that are going to be at home. They're going to watch Netflix and watch their
100%.
stupid shows. But then there's the other people that are going to pick up, you know, I don't know, something good, and maybe they'll come around to a little different way of thinking, because I think there's a lot of opportunities, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. But I always think of the Matrix when I go down and see my kids just there endlessly gaming. I'm like, okay, there it is. They're just hook them up to whatever, and they're eating their food and playing games. But, you know, they get bored with it after a while, and they get out and start kicking around the soccer ball, or, you know, throwing the rugby ball around. And so we also set up a little makeshift gym here. So that's constantly in use, which is pretty cool.
Oh, well, that's good. I think that's a nice thing. You know why you guys are probably doing well out there is because you've got that free vitamin D outside.
That's right. We get all that vitamin D. So
you don't have to. Well, all the people that are inside, I mean, think about it. No fresh food because you got to eat weird box food, and then you can't even get a ray of sunshine or any exercise.
Right.
Like, way to boost your immune system, guys. But, you know, I think we're going to make it through. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, it's been great. You know, I think the sort of the closing thoughts are, you know, obviously we will get through this. I think we're going to come out of it faster than most people think. You know, the rumor is, all of May is going to be shot. But I really think by the middle of May, we're going to, you know, have the lowest risk people out, the people that are already infected, out and doing things and taking jobs and working again. And, you know, for example, Amazon's already, you know, now doing other than the essential shipments. So that's starting to come around. So it's just a matter of time. But I think we're going to see a couple things that change for quite some time. Right now, when we go to the grocery store, we come home and everything gets wiped down and sprayed before it goes and gets put away. I think those kinds of habits will just stick with us for some time to come until we get past this thing where people just aren't getting reinfected or infected.
Wow, that seems like a lot of work. For every grocery trip from now on, I'm just going to have to wipe down everything. I don't know about that policy.
Well, I think until you get it.
I'm going to let a couple cartons slide.
Yeah, once you get it, and I'm sure there's things that make it through, but, you know, in a really weird way, I kind of want to get this damn virus and get it over with and recover from it so I can not have to think about it and go to a sporting event at Staples Center. I don't think so. I mean, I didn't get a single symptom of anything, even after my Japan trip and the Thailand trip, and went through, you know, multiple countries in transit. I'm the one who's designated to go to the store, and I've only been wearing the mask for probably 2 weeks now, but I do now wear the mask and gloves in there, and I have a whole process about, you know, when I take the gloves off. And I would think the hardest part about that whole thing is I use my phone, and so it wants my thumbprint to do Apple Pay. And I'm like, shit, I got to take my glove off. And I'm like, but I'm touching my phone anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter. And then you have this whole conversation of, whatever. If I get it, I get it.
You got to do your best, you know, that's the thing. Like, I get people being, you know, taking precautions, but you got to live a little, you know.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we can get away from some of the social distancing. It would be a real shame if people
I can't wait to hug my friends again, you know.
I know. No, I think I hope that we get, I hope that we get to that point soon, my friend. Very good. So one more time for people who maybe were looking to get some solutions from GoCoin, where do they find you?
Oh, cool. So GoCoin.com, very simple. Don't go to GOO coin because there's scammers out there that put things out there. So it's GoCoin.com, and that's for merchants that would like to have alternative currencies like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, you name it, Dash, a bunch of others, as a form of payment on their websites.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And, you know, another Tatiana show guest, Deanna Bailey, she was on a couple weeks ago. A little bit of a pro-military position, which was very adventurous because me and Josh are very anti-war. But it was a very good conversation. You have an amazing team over there. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
She's great.
Yeah, Deanna's the best. Awesome. I hope to see you soon and give you a big hug.
Okay, darling.
Take care. Bye now. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.